Boker Tov. Today's daf is Daf Vav in Gitin, as we learned for Ilu Neshama of Matel Bas Yechiel, whose yahrzeit is today. Today, of course, is Yom HaMiyuchas, the day between Rosh Chodesh and the Shlosh Yimei Hagbola, special day. So here we're down to about 12 lines on the page. The two dots Itmar and Vav and Aleph. Itmar Bubble Rav Meir Shapiro Gitin. We learned that in Eretz Yisrael you don't have to say before to bring a get from Eretz Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael. The reason of Lishma doesn't apply because they're key in Lishma. And in Eretz Yisrael, if it's at least in the same area of Eretz Yisrael, there's also Eidim Mitzvah L'Kaimo, so there's no problem confirming the signatures. So what is Bubble? Bubble is like Eretz Yisrael Gitin, says Rav. Shmuel says no, it's like Chutzlaretz, and you have to say if you come. So according to Rav, if you come from Bubble to Eretz Yisrael, theory you wouldn't have to say because at least they are if the reason is only because of B'kiyah Lishma, then there's no problem. They're both B'kiyah Lishma. But maybe this is Machlokes Malcolm Mifli Marsav Fishim B'kiyah Lishma. And in Bubble they are B'kiyah Lishma. In Bubble they were learned people. The Hani Kamiri, the ones in Bubble are learned like the ones in Eretz Yisrael. Marsav Fishim B'kiyah Lishma. Reason why you have to say Fanech is because you won't have Adam to confirm it. And over here also, if you come from Babel to Eretz Yisrael, you also won't be able to find witnesses. So therefore, the assumption is that therefore you have to say the one who says that it's like Chutzlaretz, that's Shmuel, would say that the reason is because of you have to confirm the witnesses, and they're not around. It's a far distance. It's more of a tisba rabbi. The same question we raised several times yesterday. We said back on Daf Hayomi and Daf Dalatim base, we said that at the end of the day we came out, the Rabbah also holds of Rava that not only do you need Lishma, but you also need Eidim Mitzvah L'Kaimo. So either way, if it's not Eidim Mitzvah L'Kaimo because Babel is far away, how can you say it's like Eretz Yisrael? It's not like you bring a get in Eretz Yisrael from, let's say, Yerushalayim to Mavasera. It's something close by where you can find witnesses. You can't find witnesses anyway. So how can you say that it's like Eretz Yisrael? But this Rav, it's a Rav. Everybody agrees that you have to have the ability. The reason why I said Fanech is because of confirmation, be able to confirm them. So only if it's in the same area where you know the witnesses are around, you can get confirmations. People recognize signatures. Rav Rav holds like this. When he says that Bubbles like Eretz Yisrael, he says since there are yeshivas, since there are yeshivas around, therefore it's common that there's people go from one yeshiva to another yeshiva, and they go to Eretz Yisrael back and forth. So therefore, you could find witnesses. Shmuel Savar Mesifta B'Gersaitzbei. The people in yeshiva are busy learning. They don't have time to recognize signatures and to become familiar with signatures. Here in Bubble, we made ourselves like Eretz Yisrael Gitin when Rav came to Bubble and established the yeshiva in Surah, and Shmuel had the yeshiva in Ardah. So then people were traveling from one yeshiva to another. They went up to Eretz Yisrael to learn what do they call that? The gap year. They came up for the gap year. They went. So they were learning. Therefore, at that point, Bavel became like Eretz Yisrael because yes, they were learned. B'kiyah Lishma wasn't a problem if you hold like Rabbah. But even like Rabbah also holds, you have to have Eidim Mitzvah L'Kaimo. So once they established the yeshivas, then people were traveling for the yeshivas back and forth, and they recognized signatures. Masav Rav Yirmiyah. If you don't remember, how can you say that Bubble is like Eretz Yisrael? Rav Yehuda says in the Mishnah that the eastern border of Eretz Yisrael is Rekem. Rekem. That's like outside of Eretz Yisrael. Ashkelon Darim, Ashkelon Kedarim. Ashkelon is already outside of Eretz Yisrael in the south. Makal, and that's the northern border. But Bubble, it's on Eretz Yisrael. Bubble is north of Eretz Yisrael, at least the ancient Bubble. Well, it's probably like northeast, but it's also it's north. But Bubble, it's one of the Eretz Yisrael. The evil that will come upon you will open up from the north, meaning from Babel. It's not Rav Meir Akko Eretz Yisrael Gitin. Akko is like Eretz Yisrael Gitin. I feel Rav Meir look Akko the Mikra. Akko is like Eretz Yisrael. We said it's Machlokes. What is the northern part? Right? Rav Yehuda says Rekem Mizrach, Ashkelon Darim, Akko itself, Akko Kitzafon. And Rav Meir says that no, Akko is like Eretz Yisrael for Gitin, either because it's close by or it's considered part of Eretz Yisrael, like the current Akko. But even Rav Meir is only talking about Akko, which is close by. Abel Bavel, the Merchaka, Bavel, which is far away, low. So how can you say Bavel is like Eretz Yisrael? Who most of them Varkla, Labami Bavel, right? North of Akko, or Akko and north, parts north of Akko are definitely like Chutzlar, so not like Eretz Yisrael, exception Bavel. Bavel is an exception because Bavel had the yeshivas, and now as we'll see, that Bavel also had the people in the Yichsin and Bavel, the lineage of the people, the Jews in Bavel was considered purer than that of Eretz Yisrael. In Bavel, they were considered to maintain their family lineage in a more careful way. Arechenu Bavel. So how far does Bavel go? What are the borders of Bavel? We know the borders of Eretz Yisrael delineated in the Pasuk. Then we have Shilas, what about Ashkelon, etc. But where are the borders of Bavel? So Gemara Kedusha talks about Amar Papa Kamachlokas Liuchsan. Same machlokas when it comes to Yichsan. What do we mean by that? We mean that when it comes to Yichsan, we said that all the lands are considered a mixture. They're not considered purebred Jews outside of Eretz Yisrael compared to Eretz Yisrael. But Eretz Yisrael is considered a mixture compared to Bavel. Bavel is considered the purest of the Jews in those days. So our Papa says the same machlokas that we have when it comes to lineage over there in Kedushin, kach machlokas in Gittin. We have the same machlokas in Gittin when it comes to Gittin, what is considered Bavel and what not, as we said, because once there are yeshivas there, according to Rav, Bavel is like Eretz Yisrael. So if you bring a get from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, they're all became Lishma, and they're also Edom Sing Mekaimo. So the question is, what's Bavel? So you say machlokas. If there's machlokas, the Yichsin of Gittin, the machlokas over there in the Gemara in Kedushin is for Yichsin, what cities are part of Bavel or not. Aval Gittin, but for Gittin, they're called Ad Arba Tinyana de Gishra, until the second bunch of willows, the second group of willows at the bridge. There's a bridge there, and the second the bridge expand several bunches or groups or swamps of willows. So until the second branch is considered Bavel. Again, you need a map, and you have to see exactly what that is. We know what it is today. Rav Chisda Matzrach Mek, the Sifon Leberdashi, these two cities in Bavel. Rav Chisda said if you take a get from Aktisfun to Be'erdisher, you have to say Fanei Be'erdisher Aktisfun Lo Matzrach, but from Ardishin to Aktisfun you did. Maybe the reason is going to Shema, Bahani Kamiri. So you figure like this: from Aktisfun to Ardishar, you had to say Fanei Nechtav. Or dish like this one, you didn't have to say. Is it because the Oldenbar and Be'ardashir, they were learned, and that's the reason why you don't have to say Fanech if you're coming from Ardashir, because it's like Israel, so it's the Bekin Lishma. But it is again. Even if you hold the reason for Bekin Lishma, you still need Edom Sul Kaimo. So if they were not Edom Sul Kaimo from one city to another, what's the why would you need it? In other words, these are two cities in Bavel. So apparently, if they're nearby and you can get witnesses, what's your problem? And if there is that the issue? This is where obviously the Rava. So you need and if there's Edom Mitzrayim L'Kaimo, so what's the problem over here? Ella the Kuliyam Bina L'Kaimo. Everybody else needs L'Kaimo. Bahani, Kivan, the Azli L'Shuka L'Hasam. The people from Ardisha were like a smaller town. They went to Kisvan to the marketplace. So since these people went to the Shuk there, the people in Ardishtar, right, in Aktisman rather, they were familiar with the signatures of the people in Ardishtar. So when you went from Ardishtar to Aktisman, if you brought a get from one to another, the people in Aktisman knew why? Because the people in Ardishtar would go to the big marketplace in Aktisman, and they would leave IOUs and loans and things like that. And the people in Aktisman recognized the signatures of Ardishtar, but it didn't work the other way around. Right? But the people from Ardishtar, from Ardashir, whatever, from Ardashir, they were not familiar with the signatures of the people like this one because they didn't leave, the people from Aktisvan didn't leave signatures with them. When they went to the Shuk in the big city Aktisvan, they were busy buying things and selling things and leaving IOUs and bills of sale, etc., like that. So their signatures were familiar to the people in the marketplace, but the people in the marketplace in Kisvan, their signatures were not familiar to the people of Ardisha. So therefore, if you're from Ardisha, this one, right, you didn't have to say Fanech because if there's some question, the people of Kisvan knew the signatures. But if you went from Kisvan to Ardisha, you would have to say because the people in Ardisha were not familiar with the signatures of the people there. So even if you say the reason is because of Bekim Lishma, that we said that if you went from Ardisha, listen, they were Bekin Lishma, the other ones weren't Bekin Lishma. It's unlikely to say that's the only the reason, because why were they more familiar in one town than the other? These are all places in Babel. But the answer seems to be more that even if you hold that, you still have to say that the reason is because Mitzvah Kaimo. So if Mitzvah Kaimo, why would it be one town more than the other? So the Gemara gives us explanation, because the people in the smaller town, Ardisha, went to the big marketplace on Kispan. They left their signatures there, so the people on Kispan recognize the signatures of Ardisha. Therefore, if you brought a get from Ardisha to Kispan, you wouldn't have to say B'fanei Nechtam. Rabbi Rahuna Masrif me Arsalar. So he said, even for one row of houses across the street to the other row of houses across the street, across the Rosh Hashanah, meaning like in the same city, in the same area, just across the Rosh Hashanah, he also said you have to say B'fanei Nechtam. Apparently, because one did not recognize the other. They didn't know the signatures. Even a shuna, which is considered like three houses, even from one neighborhood to another neighborhood, you also matzah. Rav matzah, we also shuna, even the same shuna. I have a Rav Udam or Rav himself. The reason why it's is because you won't find people who can confirm the signatures. These people are all in the same area. What's the problem? Shani ben Mechuza did 90. It's different because ben Mechuza, these are people who move around a lot. So therefore, if you, the people aren't there. It's not like, you don't know your neighbors that well. People are moving in and out all the time. Therefore, you couldn't rely on you won't necessarily find signatures because you say, oh, that guy, he moved away. These people just moved in. I don't know I don't know their signatures. So that's what happened over there. Most of the Rishonim Paskin, that, as we'll see, that this man say you have to say if it's a messenger bringing, usually getting or not usually done that way. Usually they do it in front of a bezdin and the husband and wife are both there. But if you bring a get from overseas, you have to say because of these reasons, because people aren't going to recognize signatures today. It's a different story. People all the time, people move around. 20% in most Western countries, 20% of people move every year. In other words, if you were in a house for over 5 years, that's considered rare. People move around a lot. So again, you wouldn't be able to recognize the signature. So even if you hold them, that the Bekin Lishma, you still have this problem of Mitzvah Makaimo.
And in Israel, signatures are blue.
Or what?
In Israel,
people
don't sign their names. They go.
Well, that's like all over. It's whatever they're right. Rav Chanin, but they're still recognizable. The bank knows if it's written, if the check is signed by the right guy or not. Rav Chanin Rav Chanin told this story. Rav Kana told the story about Rav Kana. Rav Kana, I see Geta, brought a get to Leidani Misur Nadar. So he wasn't sure. I'm not sure if the story was that he brought it from Surah to Nadar and Nadar. So two cities in Babel, like we described. Surah was the town of where Rav established his yeshiva. Nadar was the town where Shmuel established his yeshiva. Also, Lekame Rav came before Rav. Do I have to or not? After all, presumably both reasons wouldn't apply. They're Bekin Lishma over here, right? They're Bekin Lishma in Babel. They are learned people, and they know that the cat has to be Lishma, and there's Adam Suyin Lekaivo, people going from one yeshiva to another. Amalei load shrichas. You don't have to. However, Iyab the Sahanis, but if you do, it'll help. Ma'yav, so what do I mean by that? The Iyasi Baal Amar, if the Baal comes, if the husband comes and protests, and he contests the get and says, I never wrote this, it was forged, it wasn't written Lishma. Yes, Baal Amar, Lamashkim, won't pay any attention to him, Kiratanya. Now, that's the point. Even if you don't have to say, even if you're not required by law to say B'fanei Nechtam, there's an advantage to doing it. Because once you say B'fanei Nechtam, we said, okay, that's accepted. Either we're going to interrogate him and he's going to say, yes, it was written Lishma, and he checked it out. And we don't, if the husband comes and protests, we don't even listen to him. It's like a guy would come today after he gave his wife a get. 2 years later, he says, I never gave her a get. We don't listen to him. Get a tanya, mice, one of the story, shave get, but they're small. But get from Shamalo. So, pardon?
Based in the course effect,
yeah. They would keep a record of that, right? They would say they have a record of that. And that's what they would do in those days. Again, it's rare today, but they do have cases like that. There are cases here, especially now between Israel and the Bezdins, let's say in New York or London, where there's an issue. The husband doesn't want to give a get. He runs to the other country, and they force him in that country to give a get. So they make deal. The Bezdin here makes the Bezdin over there shliach to give the get. Things like that. They do that kind of thing today also, where a Bezdin does it. So when a Bezdin does it, there's no concern because they make sure the signatures are valid, etc. I know of a case like that where they a guy, there was the husband and wife were fighting over there, and they brought he came to Israel, and the police caught him here. The wife, the police caught him, and they arrested him, and they said, unless you have to agree to give the get, or we're not going to let you out of jail unless you post a big bond, whatever, whole big story. And what they did was his wife was still back in New York, so they assigned the Bezdin in New York that they should be the shlichim to give the get. That's what they do, or to accept the get on behalf of the girl, whatever. Anyway, at the end of the day, she didn't accept the get there anyway. She just wanted to make his life miserable. That's how the fights get really, really bad. He had to put, I know because I knew the lawyers involved over here, they had to put down a big bond, like his father had to put $100,000 bond, saying that if he didn't give the get, he'd lose the bond, right? And then, so the Bezdin forced him, and then she wouldn't accept the get. That's after she called the police on him, and this Mavos Satum organization, they called the cops. It was on a YouTube. Pardon?
That's the revenge. She's like stepping on her own foot.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, when these things get wild, they just want to inflict pain upon the other. They lose all sense of proportion, and it's just a matter of inflicting psychological pain. Horrible stories. Can I tell you my son was a social get him for work there? Amalo. Sarchani lam fanech panenechtem o any sarchlet. Only sarch. Do I have to say fanech or not? Came for Mishmol. Amalo beni mechanta. Where are you from? Amalo Rebbe Mikfar Sasoyani. I'm from this town, Kfar Sasoy. Kfar Sasoy, as we'll see, was like part of Eretz Yisrael. It's the name of a place like in Eretz Yisrael. Amalo sarchatalam fanech panech. You have to say fanech panechem. Shelo tiskak le'edim. So that you won't need Edom later on. In other words, he wasn't really telling, as we'll see, he was very careful. He said, you should say Fanachta, not because the King Lishma, not because of Skamo, but this way, if you say it, you're clean. The whole thing is clean. You won't need Edom afterwards to confirm it if the husband protests it. After this gentleman went out, and Rabbi Shmuel had paskin this Shaila, Rabbi Loy had heard that this is what Rabbi Shmuel told him. Rebbe, the town that this guy came from is within the border of Eretz Yisrael. It's near Tzipori, a famous town in the Galil. It's closer than Akko, and the Akko, Rav Meir Shapiro, even Akko is like Eretz Yisrael Gittin. Certainly, this town is like Eretz Yisrael Gittin. So what's the problem about people? Rav Meir they only argue the Mechan is far away compared to, because they far away from Tzipori. Avo Kfar Sasoy, all right, but Kfar Sasoy the mikvah lo. So what's the problem? Why did you make him say Fanech Panechim? Amalo shtok bini shtok. Quiet, my son. Hol v'yatsa davar beheter yatsa. In other words, since I paskin this so that it should be a heter for the woman, meaning a leniency for the woman, meaning I did it not that you really beat right then. It's not a good get unless you did. I did it so that there wouldn't be any protest. I did it to avoid any contesting of the get. That's what I did. I gave a head to that way. What was Rav Eloy's question? Rav Yishmael actually said that. He says you should say shalot, so you shouldn't need Edom later on. In other words, if it gets protest, you won't need it. So what was Rav Eloy's question? Rav Eloy had heard the first part of the psak that Yefsef Fanech Panechtim. He didn't hear the last part of the line. Shalotistically, he didn't that part when they repeated the story to him. They left that part out, and therefore Lisima the Milson, he didn't hear the whole thing, and that's why he asked the kasha. Shalach Rav Yasser Rav Chisda. Rav Yasser sent the following halacha to Rav Chisda. Gittin abam mishum lakan. Gittin who come from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. Khan was in Eretz Yisrael. Ain't talking about Fanech Panechtim. Okay, you don't have to say it because that's Bavel and became Lishma. Is the reason because he says the reason why he said Panech is because people aren't Bakim Lishma and we're afraid it's not Lishma, therefore you'll interrogate and they'll say that it's Lishma. Okay, Bahani Gemiri and in Bavel they're learned, so there's no problem. Says the same kasha we've had several times now. But this Rava, Rabbi slave Rava. Rava also holds of Rava that it's been suing Lakaimo. So there should still be a problem because from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, you may not find Edom. Ella the Kulam bin Lakam. You're right. Everybody agrees you need Lakaimo, but keeping the Ikarab, the soul keeping Nafsi, since many people go up to Eretz Yisrael and go back, it was a common trip. It's like New York to Ben Gurion, back and forth, right? They go up to Eretz Yisrael and they go down from Eretz Yisrael to Babel. Mishkach Shlichi, you'll find Adam. That's what Rav Yasser had told Rav Chisda, that they don't have to say before Nachman. Rav Yosef, Man Lim Rav Yasser Bar Samcha. Who is Rav Yosef? Why? Who tells us Rav Yasser is a reliable source? You're quoting over here Rav Abiatar, right? Rav Yasser. He tells us halacha. Who says Rav Yasser is a reliable person? He himself said to Rav Yehuda, Bnei Adam Ha'olim Shom Lakan, people who come from Babel to Eretz Yisrael, and they leave their wives and their families to learn in the yeshivas, and their wives and their children are left destitute with no income and no husband at home. Kaima B'atzmam, they fulfill about themselves this pasuk. It says in Yoel, Vayitnu Asel B'Zona, they turned the child to prostitution. Vayalda Machav Yain, they sold the daughter for wine. Vayishtu, and they drank. Meaning you abandon your family. You abandon your family to go astray. Tosa says over here, not that literally you turn them into this, but the Pishahain Mishtan Be'eretz Yisrael, they were enslaved just to get some food. Behind a bezona, bezona doesn't mean like prostitution, but rather for food. There's a story. Sold his daughter in order to go learn Torah. They should have money in Torah. You know how far crazy they went. So he said, Rav Yasser was the one who sent to Rav Yehuda, people who go from Babel to Eretz Yisrael, they're like abandoning their families. And then he quoted this pasuk. And when he quoted the pasuk, now he may have been right that that's not a good thing to do. You don't abandon your family. But because of he wrote the pasuk below sirtu without having ruling lines. You have to have ruling lines when you write psukim. Amar Yisuk said shtaim, 2 words, kosman, you can write without. Shlosha ain't kosman. You don't write 3 words, and here he wrote the whole pasuk. Masisa Tana Shalosh kosman, you can write 3 words without sirtu, that arba ain't kosman. That's why you have to write. Unfortunately, talk about that. That's not only because that it should be straight. You might, they trace lines on it, it should be straight, but it's halacha mashmi sinai that it has to be that way, not because of straight. That's the rule. So everybody knows about sirtu. He wrote this without sirtu. So therefore, number one, who says he's a bar samcha? Number 2, he quoted this pasuk and he didn't even write sirtu. He seems to be ignorant of the law. You think everybody doesn't know Rav Yitzchak's rule that 3 words already without sirtu is asur? Who says Lav Gav Rabbi? He's not a great man just because of that. We're at the first of the wide lines of the Gemara. Bishlam Milsa to tell you the svara. If you tell me something gets a svara, you understand halacha, etc. L'chaya, I can understand that. Then he wouldn't have been a reliable person if he wouldn't know svara. But Hagamari, this is simply a teaching that a traditional teaching that we have. Rav Yitzchak learned that. Gemara lo shmila. He never heard of Rav Yitzchak's lacha. He knows about sirtu, but he didn't know that if you write a pasuk, one pasuk from Ksuvim or from Tanakh, that it's actually it's in Treos, it's in the who says that he's an Amar just because he didn't know that? He didn't hear the teaching of Rav Yitzchak. But Rav Yasser, who'd ask him, the Rebbe Shalom was maskim to what Rav Yasser had said. What are we talking about? It says the famous story of Pilekish Begiba, when there was a man who chased his wife away. He got angry, chased his wife out of the house, and she went away, and that led to a whole story that she was later killed, and a war broke out between Bnei Yisrael, most of the tribes of Israel, and Binyamin, and tens of thousands, scores of thousands of people were killed, all because of this. And he says, what happened? It says, his concubine strayed from him. What does that mean? In other words, she strayed, she made a mistake, she did a bad thing and made a mistake, and he chased her out of the house. He got angry at her and she ran away. So what happened? He found like a fly in the soup. He found a fly in the plate. He found a hair. He found the hair, the osomakam, in that place. They used to shave in the pubic area so as not to cause injury to the husband's genitals. And he found hair there that could have caused his aver to be destroyed. Rav Yasser met Eliyahu Navi. What is Rav Shalom doing at this time? Rav Shalom is studying this topic of the story of Giva. What does he say? He said, Rav Shalom is saying, if Yasser b'ni kachu omer, if Yasser, my son, says this was the problem, right? That what he found the fly in the soup. Yonasan b'ni kachu omer. Yonasan said he found a hair. Right? Amalei chas v'chalila, mikas fake coming to Shmaya. The Baruch Shalom's not sure what happened. Baruch Shalom knows, of course, what happened. What do you mean? Baruch Shalom is a suffix. What happened? Amalei no. Eilu ba'eilu divil kim chayim. He's saying what he's saying. If Yasser says this, Yonason says this, my son Yonason says this, and they're both true. They're both divil kim chayim. Zvuv Matzavolo, he first found the fly. He didn't get upset about that. The Ima Matzah, but he found a hair, and that got him angry, and he yelled at the concubine. She ran away. She was later killed, and this led to a whole war. Amar Yehuda, Zvuv Bakara, he found a fly in the plate, let's say in the soup or in the food. Benima Bosamakam. And he found the name, as we said, the hair Bosamakam. Zvuv is simply repulsive. You find a fly in your soup, if there's a fly in the soup, it's disgusting. It's repulsive to you. Pardon? Yeah, there's a lot of jokes. Okay. Venima sakanta, but the hair is dangerous to him. He could have lost his aver because of that. It could have cut his aver. Venima sakanta. Therefore, he really got angry. The zvuv, he saw the flower. He didn't get so angry. Okay, the fly he didn't get so angry about, but the hair he got angry about because that was a danger. He can have some say idi vidi bakara. Some say they were both they both found both in this plate, let's say in the soup, but zvuv owns a fly could have been an accident. You served the food, it was hot, it was clean, a fly flew into the soup. But but a hair is carelessness, right? The hair, you find a hair in the food, that's being careless, right? The fly it's not their fault. Maybe the fly flew in after it was served. Right. Anyway, that was the story. So what do you see over here? So Abaya said, when they said, who said that, Rav Yasser said that if you bring a get from Babel to Eretz Yisrael, you don't have to say b'fanei nechtam because there became Lishma and the Zaydim Mitzvim L'Kaimo. So he asked about him. Rav Yosef said, who says that we can rely on Rav Yasser? Who says we can? Remember, Rav Yosef turned blind and his students also were buying Babel. So he said, who says that you can rely on him? And also, he seemed not to know the Allah of Sirtut. So he says, so Abai said, the Allah of Sirtut, he knows. He just didn't know 3 words, 2 words, 3 words. Maybe he didn't know Rav Yitzchak's teaching. And also we see that Rav Yasser said a halacha, or he said a story, when he interpreted the story about the zvuv, the fly, he said that was what he got angry about. The pasuk doesn't tell us but favors, he got angry about that. The Baruch Shalom agreed. That was the story. So you see that Rav Yasser was a bar samcha, was a reliable person. Amar Chisda, la'olam al yatam adam ema yaser b'toch beisa. You should never put fear into the people in your household. Don't put extra fear in your house. How did that whole story start? Where it was a civil war basically among the Jews. He scared her. He got angry at her. And that led to the destruction of tens of thousands of Jews. If you scare the people in your house, you cause them extra fear. This will lead to 3 terrible sins. It will lead to adultery. How do we mean lead to adultery? So Rashi says, how could it be when it comes to this man of tefillah, when she had to go to the mikveh and it's freezing outside, let's say it's winter, and she's afraid to go into the mikveh, and she's also afraid to tell her husband that she wasn't tovel, so she might lie. And that's Gili Arroyos. He's going to make shamash with Anida. That's like adultery. Ushichas dam. It's going to lead to murder. How so? Well, like the story with Pilegish Begiva, like this story that she ran away, and this eventually led to murder and war. Or Rashi says also, sometimes she just runs away, and a girl running away in darkness of the night might fall into a pit and die. The Chil Shabbos will lead to Chil Shabbos too, because let's say the food wasn't properly cooked. And her husband, she's going to come home from shul Friday night and wants the food, ready, and she might have to light a candle just to make him happy without telling him about it. Or she'll cook after it gets dark if it wasn't ready. And it could lead to that too if you instill too much fear in your family. This was the Rabbanan say. This is what, of course, the Mishnah in Amendment Leakin, and we say it every Friday night. 3 things a person should say in his house on Erev Shabbos, Im Chashecha, as Shki is coming. Isartam, have you taken Meiser properly so we can eat the food on Shabbos? Eravtam, have you done proper Chatzer so we can carry from one area to another area on Shabbos, right? And the third thing, Hadlikos Haner, have you lit candles on time? So all these three things that you're supposed to say, Isartam, Eravtam, Hadlikos Haner, you should say them gently. You don't say it's like the people tell you, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Do you say, did you light candles already? Haven't you lit candles already? What's the matter with you? Or do you say, no, dear, have you properly lit candles on time? If not, and just a gentle reminder. It's a gentle reminder. So it will be accepted. Otherwise, you just instill fear in them and people will be barogas and they won't want to do what you're doing or what you're saying. Or, if she knows you're going to get angry about it, if you forget to lit candles, you don't light candles on Shabbos, that's Chil Shabbos. These people say we light candles on Friday night. They light candles on Shabbos. Unfortunately, you're better off not lighting candles. But so you don't want to instill fear in them and cause them to be Mechal Shabbos, as I say, because Shvichas Dama, Gilei Arroyos, and Chil Shabbos. Amar Vashi, Analo Shmile had Rav Archana. I didn't hear the Rav Archana. I didn't hear Rav Archana said a nice thing. This is what we say. You have to say these three things. Isartam, Rav Likas Haner. Say it gently. I didn't hear the Rav Archana said that. The Kiyamtim Isvara, but I did it myself. Out of my own svara, my own logic told me, if you want somebody to listen, say it gently and they will agree. If you yell at them and scream at them, it's not going to help. It's going to backfire and it will not lead to good things. All right, we'll pick them here tomorrow. From the third line, Amar Ravu. Continuing with this concept of talking nicely.